The internet never forgets, for better or worse. It could be the death of you, or your only hope to survive. Hello bingers, Binge and Go Movies here. Today I'm going to talk about a mystery, thriller, and computer screen film from 2018 titled Searching. What does the computer screen genre mean? It means that this entire movie is shown through the point of view of screen devices. Watch out for spoilers and let's get into the video. The film begins with vintage footage of a happy family. The family consists of David Kim, Pamela Kim, as well as their lovely daughter, Margaret Kim. They captured every important moment in Margaret's life, from her childhood to her youth. One day, Pamela, or Pam, was diagnosed with lymphoma, or blood cancer. Pam attempted to battle it by doing the cancer workout program, and it seemed to work for her. Pam's doctor, Dr. A. Sola, sent Pam's follow-up results several years later, and it turned out that she had relapsed. Pam was supported by David and Margaret in the hospital until she passed in 2015, leaving her daughter and her husband behind. In the present, David calls Margaret on FaceTime to confront her about the trash she forgot to throw away. He also asks for her current location and when she plans to return home. She responds that she is in a study group with her friends and David hasn't met Margaret's friends yet, so he probably doesn't know who they are. Margaret turns off her phone because her friend had been waiting for her. However, she feels bad and sends an apology message. David responds, "No problem," and asks, "How did the finals go today?" Margaret responds that everything was alright. David compliments her on her efforts and expresses his appreciation for her. He types, "Mom would be too," and immediately deletes it. He was afraid of reopening old wounds and complicating his relationship with Margaret. While David is relaxing and listening to soothing instrumental music, his brother, Peter Kim, calls to ask about Pamela's kimchi gumbo recipe. When David finds Peter's marijuana jar, he wonders if he does it every day. Peter begs David not to mention anything because he is having a bad day. David finally gives up and sends Pam's kimchi gumbo recipe. Following his wife's passing, David tried to avoid talking about Pam. David appeared to feel uncomfortable even when discussing Pam's recipe. Peter recognizes this and suggests that David speak with Margaret about it. David rejects the suggestion, stating that they were alright. To avoid awkward feelings between him and his brother, Peter asks to be sent the recipe again, then hangs up the call. David reminisces by watching old video recordings after giving the recipe to Peter when Pam was cooking with Margaret. David smiles as he watches the video, but as soon as it ends, his expression turns sour. He decides to remove the video from his search results so that he isn't reminded of his late wife. David is already asleep when Margaret calls him that night. The next day, David calls Margaret, but she doesn't answer. He checks the garbage container, which is the same as it had been the day before. David believes that Margaret has forgotten her promise and has arrived at school early. It's 3:27 p.m., an hour after school has ended. He becomes increasingly worried to the point where he is unable to concentrate on his work. Even when David sends her messages all day, he receives no response. He reread the message he sent. His attention is on the garbage photo he sent this morning. On the kitchen counter, there is Margaret's book and her laptop. He texts Margaret and asks why she left her laptop at home. He also asks why she didn't come home until he remembers that it is Friday, which means that Margaret is supposedly taking piano lessons. David hangs up the phone and begins searching for the phone number for the piano lesson. David's call is answered by a woman named Shahinian. When he asks her to hand over the phone to Margaret, Shahinian provides David with some unexpected information. Margaret has cancelled the lessons membership since 6 months ago. That means Margaret has been lying to David every week for the past 6 months. Every week, he gives her $100 and Margaret always claims that the class is fun. David looks up for Evercreek High School's phone number right after. Again, the teacher states that Margaret did not appear that day in the classroom. David tells Peter about this and Peter advises him to ask her friends. That's going to be a problem considering that David doesn't know any of her friends or vice versa. He then searches for Margaret's social media accounts, but she has all of them set to private. Not running out of ideas, David uses Pam's account to search all of Margaret's friends. Pam has Isaac's phone number in her contacts, along with a note stating that he was Margaret's childhood best friend. When David notices this, he immediately contacts Isaac. Instead of speaking with Isaac, Isaac's mother answers the phone. Without skipping a beat, David says that he wants to know the condition of his daughter through Isaac. Isaac's mother says that Margaret might be invited by her son to go to the mountain. Isaac's mother comforts David by saying that she will inform Isaac to have Margaret call him. He responds, "That is perfect." After hanging up the phone, David drafts a lengthy message in which he states that he will not allow Margaret to have any free time during the summer break. David may be worried that his words will hurt his daughter's feelings, especially since he mentioned swear words in the message. So he deletes everything and instead changed the message to just "call when you get reception." The next morning, Isaac calls David to tell him that Margaret ignored him when he was trying to take her to the mountain. David immediately calls the police to report a missing person. Detective Rosemary Vick, the detective assigned to the case, calls him shortly after. As he has her on the phone line, David searches on the internet about Vick's information. She tells David to get in touch with anyone who may have been close to Margaret or know where she was last seen in order to help with the investigation. When David looked through Margaret's laptop, he notices that she has signed out of all her social media accounts. He eventually gets her password by using Pam's old email address, and he starts contacting Margaret's classmates. David creates a table to keep track of who he has spoken with. The majority of them have alibis from the night Margaret went missing, and David learns from Isaac over FaceTime that Margaret is always alone and ignores her friends. David FaceTimes a girl called Abigail, who invited Margaret to a study group on Thursday. When David inquires about Margaret, Abigail states flatly that she isn't even close to her and is only using her to get into Berkeley next year. Vic later shows David a traffic cam footage showing Margaret leaving a gas station and heading out of town. David is upset with this fact. He feels that he doesn't even know his daughter. Vic tells David to keep digging for information about her behavior. David then checks her bank account and finds out that Margaret has been depositing her piano cash into her checking account every week. 6 days before she went missing, she made an outgoing transaction of $2,500 using Venmo and sent it to an anonymous account. David is looking at Margaret's photos on Instagram and notices this one boy named Derek who always comments on everything she posts. David uses a website to look up his phone number and then dials it. Vic calls David later that night, giving him a fake ID that Margaret had made under the name Rachel Jun. Vic also confirms the fact that Margaret has put her money into her other Venmo's account. This sounds a lot like a money laundering scheme, leading Vic to believe that Margaret ran away. Did Margaret really run away from home, or is there more to this case than what meets the eye? Check it out in part 2 of this series right here. See you then!